Hello, and welcome to this last video in this series. So this is going to be about Zotero, but the other videos on this channel that were made by my predecessor kind of go through the installation process and how to use it, basically. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel, so this is actually going to be more about, what is Zotero and why should you bother? You're going to be very busy in these first few weeks and throughout probably your whole time here, right? And I want to sort of convince you. This is sort of a sales pitch, right, for why you should invest the time in this tool. So let's start off with a little bit about what is Zotero. So Zotero is basically a all-encompassing program that helps you organize and cite your sources, essentially. Okay, so there are several iterations of this. It's available as a desktop application, and there's a little browser connector that you can use in Chrome and Safari, I believe. And most importantly, there is a Word connection here. So I'm going to just demonstrate for you one of the things that you can do using Zotero. So let's write a sentence and let's cite it. So when you have everything installed correctly, you can just add citations, and when you first open it up in a new Word document, it'll prompt you for the style of citation, right? So there are many, about 9,000 styles that have been added by people. This includes things like the American Chemical Society, the Ecological Journal, APA, Chicago, and many others. So let's do APA 7th edition for now. And then this bar asks you to bring in some citations. So let's just do a couple of those. And now, whenever you're ready, you can also add a bibliography. And it cites everything for you. So as you can already probably tell, this is going to be a huge time saver. So any paper that you write, eventually if you wanted to develop those into articles that you wanted to submit somewhere, all you would have to do is just click a button and change the preferences here. Let's do Chicago. Bam. All done for you. Doesn't matter how many citations you have in a whole paper. So instead of going through manually and changing it, for submission to the Journal of Ecology versus, a different journal, you can simply click a button and it's all done for you, right? So this is also a huge time saver in that you don't have to sit there and correct every single word here. Anytime you make a correction through the Zotero desktop application, you can refresh this and then everything will update here with that information. So that basically is just a way to sort of help you save time and energy, right? So that you don't need to waste all your time on citations, right? So that's my biggest, I would say, encouragement to using this program. Once you have built out what we call a library in Zotero, you can basically reuse any of these citations for any paper, right? So instead of going, hey, what was that one paper that I read that one time? I think it was about soil ecology, but I don't really remember who wrote it or what it was called or when it was published or anything. You have all the citations here, right? So this tool is as powerful as you make it individually. You can add tags and notes and organized by those notes and tags. You can click on the most popular ones here to sort of sort out which ones that you're interested in, for example. But obviously these are only as good as you make them. So let's see here. The other thing is that when you use Zotero using like a Chromebook, for example, they have made an update to the online library from the previous videos. And now it kind of has more of a built-out layout, so you can actually add items here. If you're, for example, borrowing someone's computer and they don't have Zotero installed, you don't have to sit there and mess with their stuff. You can add it to the online version here, and this will update with the desktop version. So anything that you add, as long as you're connected to the internet at some point, it will synchronize. So all of that is covered in the other videos that were done by Renee, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that they have made a pretty significant update to the online version. Unfortunately, the Chromebooks are a little bit more limited in that you can't really cite these. You can create bibliographies right here, create a bibliography, but you can't create individual citations. So it's a little hit or miss, but I just wanted to point that out. So one of the major things that I also wanted to note is that when you add something, you can also, let's see here, when basically conceptually, right, you can create an item and you don't even necessarily need to add a PDF. You can if you wanted to, but all you need is the information about a citation. So if you had a physical book or an image or a sculpture that you wanted to cite, as long as you have the information about, the creator, the date and title and all of that, you don't need a physical item or anything. This is what I would call basically a cardboard box, right? So when it has that uniformity, you can build out citations and bibliographies with it. You can do a lot of things with that. The things that go in the box are an actual PDF or a JPEG or any kind of file that you want to put inside the box, right? So when you want to do that, you can either drag and drop a PDF directly in here and it should create a parent item automatically. It'll try and read everything that it can from a PDF, but obviously if you have something older that wasn't born digital, as they say, it may not have as comprehensive of information on there as some of the newer ones do, right? The other thing you can do is something called an export. So let's do a quick little search for soil ecology. And on most every academic site, database, you can click on one of these little titles, and then somewhere on here, you may have to hunt around a little bit, there should be an export or share or, some other button. And the one you're going to look for is RIS. So this is the one that Zotero can read. Sometimes they'll let you know what programs can read the file format. Sometimes they don't. So just try to remember RIS, but it should be able to read some of these other ones as well. So when you save it, Zotero is trying to help us out here, the connector here. So once that's saved, you can go here back into Zotero and see that they've made a box for you. So in this box they've put a little note in there because it's just automatically generated, and it's got, it looks like, information about the authors and some things, some notes about the actual article, word count and that kind of thing. You can delete this, you don't actually need this, but you can also leave it there. So this doesn't, as you can see, have the PDF on there. You can see full text finder. You can actually go hunt down the PDF and then attach it to this item if you wanted to, but it doesn't necessarily need it in order to cite it, right? But if you wanted it for yourself, to review later, you can always attach it here. So the first thing you should do when you enter into, when you have one of these saved, is basically look through all the information that it took and make sure that it's as accurate as it can be, right? So sometimes when, anything is online, there's always potential for mistakes, right? So just check the volume, the issue, the publication, title, all of that. Sometimes it might include, the title might include something like punctuation that you want to get rid of. right? We don't want to include the period because that might confuse it when it's trying to cite it for us. The other thing is that the default on your titles should always be lowercase, because when you're going from something like APA to Chicago, right, the capitalization differs. And it's always easier for a computer to bump up lowercase to uppercase than it is for it to decide what should be lowercase and what should be uppercase, right? So if you think about a word like Dickens, it doesn't know whether you're talking about Charles Dickens, which is a person and therefore should be capitalized, or if the title says "What the Dickens" and it should be lowercase, right? So to easily fix something that's all capitalized, let's select one of these guys. You can right-click the title and choose sentence case. So now everything's, lowercase, and you can basically correct these. I'm going to take this out. And this way, if you capitalize anything now, it knows that it should stay capitalized if you were to go, from Chicago to APA back to Chicago or something like that. Anything funky like that. So it's smart, but it's only as good as the user, right? So it's always good to go and check through these as you have, the information open. So if we do find the actual PDF of this journal article here, we can, verify all this information is correct. And maybe, that also there's a more specific date, because right now it's just March 2020. But that is just a little bit about sort of the way in which it works, because it can be kind of tricky and confusing if you don't have the concepts down, right? But the other thing are these wonderful folders. We call them collections. You can create a new collection here. But these basically are just little folders. You can organize however you want, by semester, by class, whatever. But everything is going to be in your library. So everything in the library doesn't necessarily mean that these are unorganized. It just means that, this is the full scope of absolutely every single thing that you have. So if you wanted to go look at unfiled items, there's a handy little folder here. And there's also duplicate items. So it's pretty clever. It tries to figure out which ones look the same. And you can actually merge items together and examine, which versions that you want to keep. So things like that. If you merge them, then it's gone. Alright, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover here. The other videos that Renee made are very comprehensive, so I don't really feel the need to change those or, make new ones that would basically be the exact same. So, yeah, that is all I have to say for Zotero. Alright. Bye-bye.